So they are really concerned about why did I not speak, like try to learn my language if I had my parents speaking the language or my grandparents speaking the language. So their connection to the language is mostly because they want to strengthen the language, they want to keep the language and for their own.
You're listening to Speaking of Language, a podcast recorded at the Language Resource Center at Cornell University. Each week, we explore a topic related to language pedagogy and second language acquisition. This week on Speaking of Language,
Soledad Chango and Ken Roberts discuss the return of Quechua and Kichwa to Cornell and the impact of offering classes in Indigenous languages.
Welcome to a new episode of Speaking of Language. I'm Angelica Kramer, the director of the Language Resource Center at Cornell University.
And I'm Sam Lupowitz, the LRC's media manager. We have Ken Roberts and Soledad Chango on our podcast today, who will continue our conversation about Quechua and Indigenous languages.
Welcome to Speaking of Language, Ken and Soledad.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. It's a big pleasure to be here too.
So before we hear more about this new initiative here at Cornell with Quechua, please share with us a little bit more about your background and your path with languages. Soledad, why don't you get us started?
Okay, thank you. First, I will start mentioning that I'm Ecuadorian. My culture is called Salasaca. So there we speak Quechua, which is a variety of Quechua. Actually, Quechua is the second variety, the second most spoken variety of the linguistics that Quechua have. So I grew up speaking Quechua as my mother tongue. And then at my 5 years, I went to school for my elementary school, and then I got my Spanish there, like in a formal way.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was 11, around 11, I got my first English teacher. So there I decided that English is going to be part of my life because the teacher was really good at teaching.
Nice.
So and there I decided that I'm also gonna be a teacher. So I really liked it. And then at the university, I decided to study languages. So there I also studied French. I took 2 years of French. So I like kind of speak three languages and a basic French too.
Nice. Ken, what about you?
Well, I grew up speaking English as a kid, studied some Spanish a little bit in high school and college, and then as I shifted in my professional academic interest towards the study of Latin America, I began to study more Spanish, a lot of which I learned really informally in the field, living and working and studying in different Latin American countries. And I spent a little bit of time in language classes in Guatemala and Nicaragua, and spent other time in the field studying Spanish. I confess I don't know Quechua or Kichwa, but I have a lot of interest in the languages as part of new initiatives that we've developed through Latin American studies here within Ecuador. We had an interest in bringing Quechua back to Cornell, and ultimately we had an opportunity to apply for a Fulbright foreign language teaching associate to give us an opportunity to bring Soledad here. And so I don't speak Quechua myself, but I've been involved through the Latin American Studies program, which is actually, I should point out, has just recently been renamed Latin American and Caribbean Studies at Cornell. And so we are very pleased to be supporting the study of Quechua again at Cornell.
You mentioned that Quechua was brought back, that there was some demand for it after a hiatus where it was not offered at Cornell. Can you go into a little more detail about what brought it back?
Right. I should point out that Cornell was one of the first, if not the first, university in the United States to teach Quechua. And this went back to a longstanding program we had, in particular in anthropology in the Andean region. So we had quite a bit of work that Cornell was doing in the Andean region going back to the 50s and 60s. And we introduced the study of Quechua at Cornell, actually published a Quechua dictionary at Cornell. But the program unfortunately went away around 2007, 2008 in a context of the retirement of a key faculty member and budget cuts. And so basically, we stopped teaching Cornell, unfortunately, about 14 years ago. And fairly recently, when I was the director of the Latin American Studies program, we were approached by a student organization, Contigo Peru, that students who are from Peru and have an interest in the Andean region, and they specifically asked us, why are we not teaching Quechua at
Mm-hmm.
Cornell? And they requested it, and we were very sympathetic to their request. And although we've not been in a position to hire a faculty member to come back and teach Quechua permanently, we decided as a first step towards reintroducing the language that we would apply for a Fulbright grant that would allow us to bring a foreign language teaching associate to Cornell to teach Quechua. And so we applied for that last year. We were very pleased. We had a number of applicants for the position, and we selected Soledad, and she agreed to come, and we're delighted to have her here.
Yeah, wonderful. So, Soledad, that actually is the perfect segue. Can you tell us a little bit more about your experience as an FLTA teaching an Indigenous language in the U.S.? What does your classroom here look like? So, how did the whole process work?
Yeah, it's been so nice to be here and sharing my language through the culture. So students are really motivated about learning a native language, their ancestors' language. They are really connected to their roots. So it's really nice for me to be like part of this program, part of this progress a process of strengthening a language which maybe was kind of disappearing here at Cornell in particular. But yeah, we are here to open that space for the coming students to. I know that Cornell is going to like offer more courses in the coming years for Cornell for Kichwa courses. So it's so nice to be part of this process. So I've been working to my students since the classes started here at Cornell. It's been a nice experience. They are really connected to the traditions that I have as a native Quechua speaker, the traditions that I have as a Salasaka woman. And then I've been like trying to share every single thing that we have as culture that we have and to teach in the same way, like taking those tools for teaching the language has been really a good connection for them, and they are really engaged in that. And yeah, it's been so nice to be working with them. They are so I'm so proud of them.
I think it'd be interesting to know. I would be curious, and I think the audience would be curious in knowing how many of the students are actually from the Andean region, so they have a family heritage, and but do you have other students who are from the United States and maybe planning to do work in the Andean region, and what are their motivations? I know some of the students said that were from the region and said that their primary motivation was they wanted to be able to talk to their grandparents, and which is a really cool thing. But I think it'd be interesting for the audience to hear a little bit more about sort of what brings Cornell students to the study of Quechua.
In general, all the students that I have are connected to, if they haven't like if they weren't born in an Indian country, or they have like their grandparents who used to speak Quechua, or their grandparents or their parents still speak a little Quechua still. So they are really concerned about why did I like not speak, like try to learn my language if I had my parents speaking the language, or my grandparents speaking the language. So their connection to the language is mostly because they want to strengthen the language, they want to keep the language and for their own, and most of them have like future objectives connected to the language too. For example, one student, she is studying chemical engineering, and she really wants to make science in Quechua, or in Quechua in her case. So it's something really, really wonderful. It's something that even doesn't happen with in the community, because Quechua or Quechua is kind of limited to some topics, to some science still. So the fact that she's like studying like chemical engineering, and the fact that she's studying also Quechua, there's going to be something great in both connections after she got her Quechua better. And yeah, so then in general, I think each of them have different type of connections and objectives with the Quechua language process they are having now. So, and most of them are Peruvian, and I have two
Mm-hmm.
students who are from Ecuador. So they also mentioned that they want to speak with their grandparents. They really want to strengthen that language in very different ways. For example, there's one student who was born here. So she told me that she's studying anthropology, and she's planning to travel to Peru to study anthropology there, and also to connect her language with the native Quechua speakers. So these strong connections are really great for me, and they really
Yeah.
connect myself to the students too. Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Soledad, walk us through one of your class sessions. What do you do in your classroom? How do you connect your students specifically with the target culture? Is there a way to connect them with other speakers of Quechua or Kichwa? Like, what does a class session look
Yeah.
like?
I'm going to talk specifically the class that I had today, and I started with some like games, guessing different words, vocabulary that we have been learning. So just to make sure they are actually learning vocabulary. And then I took a story from a real context from my culture. So I prepared pictures from my culture, like people dressed in my traditional culture, and like to making a story, trying to like fit every single thing according to what they have been learning. And it was really nice for them. And after the class, they said, oh, today I learned a lot through the story. So it was really nice to
Mm-hmm.
have the pictures there, and real pictures, because they are real pictures that I took back in my country. So I created that story, and I created like that, like timeline for the story for them to be like very significant. So these are things that actually happen in my culture, and I wanted my students to know. So these are pretty much what I my sessions look like. I bring something new. I try to bring every single class something new for them to be significant. For example, there's a shawl which is decorated with a lot of colors. So
Mm-hmm.
colors were thought with that shawl. So I said this shawl is very representative for my culture, and yeah, I tell them the story of the shawl, and then the colors that we have in the shawl. So they were like, oh, that represents that, and then to be very connected and engaged with the culture and with the language. So that makes really meaningful for them.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful.
What are some opportunities for students who are not currently enrolled in Quechua to get involved and learn the language?
Yeah, unfortunately, there were a lot of people who couldn't enroll in the course. So this is an invitation for all the people who were not able to be part of the course, and also for the people who want to be part of on an informal session. So on Thursdays at 3:30 until 4:30, we are like given Quechua or Kichwa discussion sessions in the Language Resource Center. So all of you are invited to be part of. Another good thing about experiencing my life here at Cornell teaching my native language is that I've also been asked to share my language and my culture in different settings, and so I've been asked to be part of a course of a Spanish course, and so just today I shared with them where I come from, what's the story of what's the history of my language, the history of my culture. So it's really nice to have different type of settings, different type of even points of view in different languages, also to share my language, to share my culture. It's also nice to be here and to have people who is interested on learning more about us. So it's really nice. And like the whole year that I'm gonna be here, the whole time that I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna be sharing as long as I can. And yeah, Cornell has me here, and I'll be sharing all of what I have in my heart and in my back to you. So thank you so much for that.
And what unfortunately our listeners cannot see because it is only a podcast, Soledad is wearing beautiful jewelry today that
Thank
she
you.
told us is actually a family heirloom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what it's part of the culture too. So everything we wear is part of our ancestors.
Wonderful. So, Ken, what are some of the plans for the future to build on the work that Soledad is currently doing with Quechua and Kichwa? Is there anything already that's in the making? Any ideas?
We would definitely like to continue with the teaching of Quechua, and really, we don't see this as a 1 year, one-off kind of opportunity. We would like to use this as a foundation to try to build on, to really reintroduce Quechua to the curriculum. In the short term, most likely we'll continue with the Fulbright program. We might do that for a couple of years, we would like to move towards working within the language consortium with different universities that Cornell is part of, and to find a way to make sure that Quechua is offered within that consortium. So it would be not only Cornell students, but also other students from our affiliated universities that would have access to the language. So that would probably involve some virtual learning opportunities, which is quite common with lesser taught languages, and where every university is not going to be able to have their own professor in all of the lesser taught
Sure.
languages. But if we can work together and pool resources, and it's a wonderful way to try to preserve, in particular, indigenous languages like this that are that are struggling to hold on. And it's so exciting when we have heritage students who are who come from a particular cultural heritage, but as over time the language is not being as widely spoken in some of the communities. And so if we can help the students to reintroduce them to the language of their heritage, it's a wonderful way, I think, to help protect the languages and preserve them. So we would definitely like to continue building upon this foundation and try to continue to have Quechua within the curriculum at Cornell.
Based on what I've been studying about my language, is that we don't have a lot of resources for our students. So one thing that I've been thinking about since a long time ago was why we do not have like a dictionary in an app, so students can have like direct access for vocabulary words, and so to make the Quechua and Quechua learning even easier for them. So this idea came up to my mind like since so many years ago. So as I'm here at Cornell, I know that I will have a lot of resources and a lot of people who can help me too. So and I proposed this to Ken, and I'm glad that Ken is working like with me, and I'm really blessed right now because also a student in the class is working, is studying kind of systems. I'm not really sure about that, but he has had long experience creating apps and doing all that, all related to that. So he told me that he will be able to do that, and he is really enthusiastic about doing that. So unfortunately, he's taking a lot of credits in right now, but he's still interested of working with me on working to like benefit our students and to make our language even more visible for everybody. So this is something that we are like still planning on, and so I'm really glad to be working on that too.
Fantastic. So, where can our listeners find out more about Quechua, Kichwa, and Latin American Caribbean studies?
Well, they can check the website for Latin American and Caribbean Studies, and there's more information there. We have a new website with I should point out we're going through. We've changed the name to Latin American and Caribbean Studies as part of new initiatives that we're trying to do to really develop and bring more attention to the study of the Caribbean Basin region. So we've got a new website, but there's information there on the study of Quechua. The language is being taught in collaboration with the Department of Romance Studies, which is where Spanish and Portuguese, other Latin American languages, are being taught. And so there's information there as well about the teaching of Quechua. If you'd like to learn more about it, we have a class in the fall and then a follow-up course in the spring semester as well.
Great. Before we sign off, we would like to ask both of you to share your favorite word in a language you speak, you love, you are learning, you want to learn. What is that word? Soledad, why don't you share your favorite word with us?
Yes, sure. Um, the word that I love is a Quechua word, which is Tupananchiskama. And so the kind of short story is that Quechua and Kichwa doesn't have goodbye. So it kind of means until life make us meet again. So this is a really great word for me. I have it in my heart. So Tupananchiskama.
Wonderful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And you will have a hard time topping that one, Ken. What's yours?
I don't think I can top that. But I'm not sure that I have a favorite word in Spanish, but I had mentioned that a Spanish term that is becoming widely used just quite recently, sort of and stirred up some debate in my field. I'm a political scientist. I teach on Latin American politics, and there's a Spanish term called alto golpe, which means self coup, that has been introduced and debated in American political science recently as we have struggled to try to make sense of what just happened in January in the United States. And so there's been a debate as to, because we don't really have a term for this within English for what we just saw in January. And so people who study Latin America said, well, wait a minute, we have a term for this in Spanish that actually fits. But it basically refers to some sort of breaking of the constitutional order by an incumbent president. So anyway, there's been considerable debate about this term of alto golpe in political science in recent terms. So it's sort of an interesting importation of a terminology that we don't have in English in my field.
Well, Soledad, Ken, thank you so much for speaking of language with us today.
Thanks to you.
Yes, thank you. Enjoyed it, and it's wonderful we appreciate your support for the Quechua program at Cornell.
next week, we will talk all things Southeast Asia with Tom Pepinski.
Until then,
Auf Wiederhören!
The Language Resource Center is located on the ground floor of Stimson Hall on Cornell's main campus in Ithaca, New York. Check us out on the web at lrc.cornell.edu.
or follow Cornell LRC on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Speaking of Language is produced by Angelica Kramer and Sam Lupowitz.
Recorded by Sam Lupowitz.
Original music by Sam Lupowitz, Dan Gable, and Joe Gibson.
Thanks also to the College of Arts and Sciences at Cornell University.
As a reminder, the ideas and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the College of Arts and Sciences or any other official entity of Cornell University.
We thank our listeners, and do stay tuned for our next episode.